Dr. Jihu Park rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the brain scan on her computer screen. Something was wrong with the data. Or perhaps something was right, but in an unexpected way. These readings can't be correct, she muttered to herself. The laboratory of the Global Pandemic Response Center was quiet at 3 a.m. Most of her colleagues had gone home hours ago, but Jihu couldn't sleep. Not while the NX-7 plague continued to spread through the Mars colonies, claiming more lives each day. She zoomed in on the language center of the infected brain. There it was again, activity patterns that shouldn't exist in a patient suffering from a viral infection. The brain was lighting up as if it were processing complex linguistic information, even though the patient had been unconscious for days. Jihu reached for her coffee mug and found it empty. She stood up, stretching her back after hours of hunching over screens. Through the large observation window, she could see the quarantine ward where 30 infected colonists lay in medically induced comas. Their skin showed the characteristic blue veining that had given the plague its nickname, the Blue Death. 6 months ago, the first cases had appeared in Olympus City, the largest human settlement on Mars. Scientists initially thought it was a simple bacterial infection. Then people started dying by the hundreds. Now 3 colonies were under strict quarantine, with thousands dead and more infected each day. Jihu walked to the staff room and made a fresh pot of coffee. As the machine gurgled, she thought about what she would say to Director Kim in the morning. He wouldn't be happy about her new theory. Back at her desk, fresh coffee in hand, Jihu pulled up the brain scans of 5 more patients. She arranged them in order of infection progression, from day 1 to day 7. The pattern was unmistakable. As the infection progressed, the activity in the language centers grew more organized, more purposeful. It's like something is learning to speak, she whispered. Talking to yourself again, Dr. Park. Jihu jumped, nearly spilling her coffee. Hansol, her research assistant, stood in the doorway with a tired smile. His lab coat was wrinkled, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. Hansol, look at this. Jihu waved him over. Hansol leaned over her shoulder, squinting at the screen. That's weird. Why is the Wernicke's area so active? Not just active. Look at the progression. Jihu clicked through the images. It's becoming more structured. Day by day, the patterns are becoming more like normal speech processing. Hansol frowned. But these patients are in comas. They're not speaking or understanding language. Exactly. Jihu sat back in her chair. So what's causing this activity? Hansol rubbed his chin. Could be random neural firing from the infection. Brain damage can cause all sorts of strange effects. Jihu shook her head. This isn't random, these are organized patterns getting more complex over time. She paused. Hansol, what if the pathogen is affecting the language centers on purpose? Hansol looked at her like she had suggested the moon was made of cheese. You mean the virus wants to talk? I know how it sounds, Jihu interrupted, but look at the data. Whatever this pathogen is, it's not behaving like any virus or bacteria we've seen before. Before Hansol could respond, his tablet beeped. He checked it and sighed. Patient 34 is showing increased brain activity. I need to adjust his medication. I'll come with you, Jihu said, suddenly eager to see one of the patients up close. I want to check something. They walked to the quarantine ward and put on their protective suits. The airlock hissed as they stepped into the large room filled with hospital beds. The soft beeping of monitors and the hum of ventilators filled the air. Blue veins showed through the patient's pale skin like rivers on a map. Hansol moved to a bed where a middle-aged man lay. The monitor above him showed elevated brain activity. As Hansol prepared a syringe of sedative, Jihu studied the man's brain scan on the bedside screen. Look, she pointed. It's the same pattern I was showing you. Hansol glanced at the screen, then injected the sedative into the IV line. His fever's up too, 104 degrees. Jihu made a note on her tablet. As they moved to leave, another monitor began beeping urgently. A young woman 2 beds down was convulsing, her back arching off the bed. They rushed to her side. Seizure, Hansol said, reaching for the emergency medication. As they worked to stabilize the woman, Ji-Hoo noticed something strange. During the seizure, the pattern in the language center of the woman's brain had changed dramatically. It was now pulsing in a regular, almost deliberate rhythm. Once the patient was stable, they returned to the lab. Ji-Hoo immediately pulled up the data from the seizure. "This changes everything," she said, excitement making her voice shake. During the seizure, the language center was more active than ever, but in a completely new pattern. Hansol looked skeptical. "Ji-Hoo, you need sleep. You're starting to see patterns that aren't there." "I know what I'm seeing," Ji-Hoo insisted. "This pathogen is doing something to the brain's communication systems. I need to show Director Kim." "He won't be in until 9 a.m., Hansol said. "Get some rest first." Ji-Hoo reluctantly agreed. She saved her findings and went to the small rest area where a cot waited for nights like these. But sleep wouldn't come. Her mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. At 8:30 a.m., Ji-Hoo was waiting outside Director Tae-Wan Kim's office, a tablet full of data clutched in her hand. When he arrived, his face showed surprise at seeing her there. "Dr. Park." "Early as usual," he said, unlocking his door. "Director Kim, I need to show you something urgent," Ji-Hoo said, following him inside. Kim sat at his desk with a tired sigh. At 55, the director had aged visibly since the plague began. "Another theory?" Ji-Hoo connected her tablet to his screen and showed him the brain scans. She explained what she had found, trying to contain her excitement. "So you believe this pathogen is learning our language?" Director Kim's tone made it clear what he thought of that idea. "Not exactly," Ji-Hoo said. "I think it's trying to communicate through us. It's rewiring the language centers to create a bridge between its consciousness and ours." Kim stared at her for a long moment. "Dr. Park, you've been working too hard. This is a pathogen, not an intelligent being." "But the data shows brain inflammation affecting random neural pathways," Kim interrupted. "Nothing more." "It's not random," Ji-Hoo insisted. "Look at the progression. It's becoming more organized, more—" "Enough!" Kim's hand slammed on his desk. "We are fighting to save lives, Dr. Park. I need you focused on treatment protocols, not chasing wild theories." Ji-Hoo took a deep breath. "Sir, what if the reason we can't treat this plague is because we don't understand what it is? What if it's not trying to kill us, but to speak to us?" Kim rubbed his temples. "Ji-Hoo, listen to yourself. You're talking about a microscopic organism having intelligence, intentions." "I know it sounds impossible," Ji-Hoo admitted. "But the evidence is circumstantial at best." Kim finished for her. "Now, I want you to go home. Get some real sleep. Come back tomorrow, ready to work on actual solutions." Ji-Hoo knew that tone. There would be no convincing him today. She gathered her tablet and left his office, frustration burning in her chest. When she returned to the lab, she found Hansol looking pale, leaning against a wall. "Hansol, are you okay?" she asked, concerned. "Just dizzy," he said with a weak smile. "Probably need food. Been here all night." Ji-Hoo frowned, noticing a slight blue tint at the edges of his eyes. "Hansol, roll up your sleeve." "What?" "Why? Just do it." Reluctantly, Hansol pushed up his lab coat sleeve. Thin blue lines were visible under the skin of his forearm. Ji-Hoo's blood ran cold. "Hansol, you're infected." His eyes widened with fear. "That's impossible. I followed all protocols." "We need to get you into quarantine," Ji-Hoo said, already, reaching for the contamination alarm. "Wait." Hansol grabbed her wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. His eyes rolled back, and when he spoke again, his voice had changed, becoming flat and strange. "Your species is being evaluated. We have questions." Ji-Hoo froze, staring at her assistant in shock. Then Hansol collapsed to the floor, unconscious, but breathing. As the contamination alarms began to wail, Ji-Hoo knew one thing with absolute certainty. The plague wasn't silent anymore. It had found its voice, and it had chosen to speak to her. 3 days after Hansol's collapse, Ji-Hoo stood in her apartment staring at the makeshift laboratory she had created. Equipment borrowed from friends at other research facilities covered her dining table. Her living room walls were plastered, with printouts of brain scans and data charts. She hadn't been back to the Pandemic Response Center since that day. Director Kim had placed her on mandatory leave, claiming she was suffering from stress and exhaustion. Her security clearance had been revoked, her research confiscated, but not all of it. Ji-Hoo had managed to save a copy of Han Sol's brain scan during the moment he had spoken those strange words. She had also secretly recorded his voice. Those files were now the center of her unauthorized investigation. Ji-Hoo played the recording again, listening to Han Sol's altered voice. "Your species is being evaluated. We have questions." The intercom by her door buzzed. Ji-Hoo jumped, quickly covering her work with a sheet before answering. "Who is it?" "Do-Yun Lee, from Seoul University." Ji-Hoo relaxed slightly. She had reached out to Dr. Lee 2 days ago, though. She hadn't expected him to come in person. She buzzed him up. Do-Yun Lee was shorter than Ji-Hoo had expected. He wore thick glasses and carried a heavy backpack. His handshake was firm. "Dr. Park," he said, stepping into the apartment. "Your message was intriguing." "Thank you for coming," Ji-Hoo said, closing the door. "I wasn't sure you would." "A neurobiologist claiming that a pathogen is trying to communicate?" Do-Yun smiled. "How could I resist?" Ji-Hoo removed the sheet covering her work. "This is everything I have." Do-Yun approached the table, his eyes widening at the equipment. "Impressive home setup." "I didn't have much choice," Ji-Hoo said. "The center shut me out." Do-Yun nodded, studying the brain scans on the wall. "Tell me everything." For the next hour, Ji-Hoo explained her findings. How the NX7 plague affected the language centers of the brain in patterns that grew more organized over time. How Han Sol had spoken words that weren't his own before falling unconscious. How Director Kim had dismissed her theories and isolated her. Do-Yun listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sat on her couch, thinking. "You understand why this sounds impossible," he finally said. "I do," Ji-Hoo admitted. "But I know what I saw, what I heard." "Play me the recording again." Ji-Hoo tapped her tablet and Han Sol's altered voice filled the room. Do-Yun closed his eyes, listening intently. When the short message ended, he asked her to play it 3 more times. "There's something unusual about the speech pattern," he said after the 4th replay. "It's not just the tone. The rhythm is wrong for Korean or English." "Wrong how?" Ji-Hoo asked. "Human languages have natural cadences," Do-Yun explained. "This doesn't follow any human speech pattern I've ever heard. It's too precise, too measured." Ji-Hoo felt a chill. "Like something non-human trying to use human vocal cords?" "Possibly." Do-Yun stood and moved to the brain scans. "Show me the exact moment he spoke those words." Ji-Hoo pulled up the scan on her tablet. Do-Yun studied it carefully. "Amazing," he murmured. "The activity pattern doesn't match normal speech production. It's more like translation." "Translation?" "Yes. See this area?" Do-Yun pointed to a region of the brain. "In normal speech, we formulate thoughts here, then they move to the speech centers. But in this scan, the activity flows in reverse, like the brain is receiving information and converting it." Ji-Hoo's heart raced. "Converting it from what?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Do-Yun looked at her, excitement in his eyes. "Do you have scans from other patients who exhibited similar patterns?" 4 others, Ji-Hoo said. "But none of them spoke like Han Sol did." "May I see them?" Ji-Hoo pulled up the files. Do-Yun spent the next 2 hours analyzing them, making notes, comparing patterns. "There's definitely a progression," he said finally. "The early cases show disorganized activity, but the later ones, including your assistant, show increasingly structured patterns. If this is a form of communication, the pathogen is getting better at it." "Getting better how?" Ji-Hoo asked. "It's learning," Do-Yun said simply. "With each host, it's figuring out how to use our neural pathways more effectively." Ji-Hoo sank into a chair. "So I was right. NX7 isn't just a disease. It's trying to speak to us." "I believe so. Do-Yun agreed. But we need more data. Your Han Sol's case is the most advanced example, but it's still just one clear instance of communication. I can't get more data, Ji-Hoo said bitterly. I'm locked out of the center. Do-Yun frowned. What about news reports? The plague has infected thousands. Surely there are other cases like Han Sol's. Ji-Hoo turned on her television. The news was grim. The Martian colonies were being evacuated. Earth governments had implemented strict quarantine protocols, turning away ships that hadn't been properly screened. The death toll had reached 1 million. But there was something new. Reports of infected patients speaking in strange voices before falling into comas. Doctors were calling it terminal lucidity, a common phenomenon where dying patients experience a final moment of clarity. That's it, Ji-Hoo said, pointing at the screen. That's what happened to Han Sol, but it wasn't terminal lucidity. It was the pathogen speaking. Do-Yun nodded slowly. We need to capture more of these moments, analyze them, compare the messages. How? We can't exactly walk into a quarantine ward with recording equipment. Do-Yun was quiet for a moment. There might be a way. I have colleagues at hospitals around the world. I could ask them to be on the lookout for these episodes to record them if possible. Would they do that without knowing why? Some would, Do-Yun said, especially if I frame it as linguistic research into terminal lucidity. Ji-Hoo's tablet pinged with a news alert. The center had announced a breakthrough in understanding NX7. Director Kim was giving a press conference. They watched as Kim explained that the plague affected neural pathways in unique ways, causing hallucinations and speech distortions in its final stages. He emphasized that these were symptoms of brain damage, nothing more. He's covering it up, Ji-Hoo said, anger rising in her voice. He knows I'm right, but he's too afraid to admit it. Fear is a reasonable response, Do-Yun pointed out. If you're correct, it means we're dealing with a non-human intelligence using our bodies as communication devices. That's terrifying. Ji-Hoo stood and paced the room. We need proof that can't be ignored. Something so clear that even Kim can't dismiss it. Do-Yun watched her carefully. What are you thinking? Ji-Hoo stopped pacing. I need to hear it myself. Directly. What do you mean? I need to become a host, Ji-Hoo said, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. I need to let it speak through me. Do-Yun stared at her in shock. That's insane. The mortality rate is over 90%. But not 100%. Ji-Hoo countered. Some people survive, and if I'm right about what this pathogen wants, maybe understanding it is the key to survival. Ji-Hoo, this is suicide. No, she said firmly. It's first contact, and sometimes first contact requires sacrifice. Do-Yun stood facing her. Even if I agreed with this madness, how would you even get a sample of NX7? It's the most controlled substance on the planet right now. Ji-Hoo walked to her refrigerator and opened the freezer compartment. Inside was a small medical container labeled with biohazard symbols. Before the center locked me out, she said quietly, I took a sample, just in case. Do-Yun's face paled. You smuggled out an active sample of the deadliest pathogen in human history? I had to, Ji-Hoo said. No one was listening. No one was seeing what I saw. Do-Yun stared at the container, then back at Ji-Hoo. If you do this, you'll likely die, and I'll be complicit. You can leave, Ji-Hoo told him. I won't blame you. Do-Yun was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed deeply. If you're doing this, you'll need monitoring equipment, medical support, someone to record whatever happens. Relief washed over Ji-Hoo. You'll help? Against my better judgment, yes. Do-Yun removed his glasses and cleaned them nervously. But we do this properly. I'll bring more equipment tomorrow. Proper medical supplies. If you're going to make contact with this thing, we're going to document everything. Ji-Hoo nodded, looking at the small container that held the NX7 pathogen. Inside that vial was either her death sentence or the key to understanding an alien intelligence. Tomorrow then, she said. As Do-Yun left, promising to return with supplies, Ji-Hoo stood alone in her apartment, surrounded by brain scans and data. The recording of Han Sol's altered voice played again in her mind. Your species is being evaluated. We have questions. Soon she would have questions too, and she was willing to risk everything to hear the answers. Are you sure about this? Do-Yun asked, adjusting the last electrode on Ji-Hoo's temple. Ji-Hoo lay on her bed, which they had converted into a monitoring station. Medical equipment surrounded her. Heart monitors, brain scanners, and IV stands. Do-Yun had borrowed from university colleagues. A camera was set up to record everything. I'm sure, Ji-Hoo said, though her voice trembled slightly. It had been 24 hours since she had injected herself with the NX-7 sample. The first symptoms had appeared faster than expected. A slight fever, headaches, and already faint. Blue lines were visible beneath the skin of her arms. Your fever is 101.3, Do-Yun said, checking the monitor. Heart rate elevated but stable. Brain activity shows early signs of the pattern we observed in other patients. Ji-Hoo nodded. How long until the communication phase? Based on Han Sol and the other cases, 3 to 5 days. But yours is progressing faster, maybe 2 days. And after that? Do-Yun didn't answer right away. They both knew what happened after the communication phase. Coma, organ failure, death. We'll deal with that when we get there, he finally said. I've prepared treatments that might slow the progression. Ji-Hoo closed her eyes. No, once we make contact, no treatments. I need to be clear-headed, need to understand. Ji-Hoo, promise me, she insisted, opening her eyes to look at him. Do-Yun sighed. I promise, but only during active communication. The rest of the time we fight this thing. Ji-Hoo nodded, satisfied. Have you prepared the questions? Yes. Do-Yun showed her a tablet with a list. Basic communication first, then questions about their nature and intentions. Finally, how to establish long-term contact without killing the host. Good, Ji-Hoo said, then winced as a sharp pain shot through her head. Another headache? Yes. Worse this time. Do-Yun gave her pain medication through the IV. Try to rest. Save your strength. Ji-Hoo drifted in and out of consciousness for the next day. Her fever climbed to 103, then 104. The blue veins spread across her body, creating intricate patterns on her skin. Do-Yun stayed by her side, monitoring everything, taking notes, adjusting medications. On the morning of the third day, Ji-Hoo woke. With startling clarity, the pain was gone. She felt light, as if floating. Do-Yun, she called out. He rushed to her side from where he had been dozing in a chair. Ji-Hoo, how do you feel? Different. Clear. Like my mind is bigger somehow. Do-Yun checked the monitors. Your brain activity is off the charts, especially in the language centers. This matches the pre-communication phase we saw in Han Sol's scans. It's coming, Ji-Hoo said. She could feel something moving in her mind, like shadows gathering in a corner. Get ready, start recording. Do-Yun activated the camera and audio equipment. He sat beside the bed, tablet in hand, ready with his questions. Remember, Ji-Hoo said, her voice growing weaker. Whatever happens, get answers. This may be our only chance. I will, Do-Yun promised. Just hold on. Ji-Hoo's back suddenly arched, her body going rigid. Her eyes rolled back, showing only whites. The monitors beeped frantically as her heart rate spiked. Then she went limp. When her eyes opened again, they seemed different somehow. Focused, yet distant. When she spoke, the voice wasn't hers. It was flat, mechanical, with a strange rhythm that no human would use naturally. We are the collective. We recognize this host as optimal for exchange. Communication established. Do-Yun's hands shook as he checked the recording equipment. It was working. He took a deep breath and referred to his tablet. We are humans. We wish to understand you. What are you? Ji-Hoo's body was still, but her face twitched in small, strange movements. Classification difficult in your language. We are many as one. You would say, network consciousness. We evolved in the ice beneath Mars' surface, dormant for billions of years. Your colonies awakened us. Are you attacking us? Do-Yun asked. Is that why people are dying? Negative. Deaths are failed communication attempts. Your bodies are hostile environments to us. We attempted connection through biochemical signals. You did not comprehend. We adapted, found neural pathways for direct exchange. Du-Yun glanced at the brain scan. The activity patterns were unlike anything he had ever seen, pulsing in complex rhythms. Why are you trying to communicate with us? You are invaders on our world. We needed to understand threat level, to determine your nature. We didn't know you existed, Do-Yun explained. We came to Mars to explore, to build new homes for humans. Understood. Initial fear resolved. Now curiosity. Your species is unusual, complex, contradictory. Jihu's body convulsed suddenly. The monitors showed her temperature rising again, reaching dangerous levels. Her breathing became labored. The host is failing, the flat voice said. Connection unstable. Please, Do-Yun said urgently. How can we communicate without harming the host? There must be a way for both our species to coexist. Jihu's body went still again. Current method inefficient, causes damage. We are learning to adapt to create stable symbiosis. Symbiosis? Du-Yun leaned forward. You mean you could live inside humans without harming them? Affirmative. Early attempts failed. Too much chemical change. But we are evolving method with each connection. This host, Jihu's hand moved to touch her own chest, shows promising compatibility, higher resistance to negative effects. Du-Yun's eyes widened. Are you saying Jihu might survive this? Possible. Uncertain. We are attempting to modify our structure to maintain connection without damage. What do you want from us? Do-Yun asked. Partnership, the voice said simply. We offer knowledge beyond your comprehension in exchange for coexistence. What kind of knowledge? Molecular manipulation, energy conversion, memory storage, technologies we perfected over billions of years of evolution. Du-Yun was stunned. And what would you gain from this partnership? Mobility. Sensory experience. Your bodies can move, see, hear, touch. We have been static, sensing only chemical changes for our entire existence. Through you, we could experience your world, your solar system. You want to use our bodies to explore? Not use. Share. Symbiosis benefits both. Jihu's body suddenly convulsed again, more violently this time. Blood trickled from her nose. The monitors showed her vital signs dropping rapidly. Connection failing. The voice said, now weaker. Host systems critical. No. Do-Yun grabbed Jihu's hand. Don't let her die. If you want partnership, prove it. Save her. Attempting. Difficult. Requires reconfiguration. Jihu's body went into full seizure. Du-Yun rushed to stabilize her, injecting medications, adjusting the IV. For several terrifying minutes, he fought to keep her alive as the monitors screamed warnings. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the seizure stopped. Jihu lay still, her breathing shallow but regular. The monitors showed her vital signs stabilizing at a low but sustainable level. Du-Yun checked her pupils, her pulse. She was in a coma, but alive. And something was happening to the blue veins on her skin. They were changing color, shifting from blue to a silvery white. The pattern was becoming more intricate, more deliberate, like circuit pathways across her body. Du-Yun sat back, exhausted and confused. What had the collective done? Was Jihu still in there? He checked the recording, equipment. Everything had been captured, the entire conversation with the alien intelligence. Proof that could not be ignored. As morning light filtered through the apartment windows, Do-Yun uploaded the files to multiple secure servers. Whatever happened next, the truth would be known. The plague was not a plague at all. It was a first contact event. An alien intelligence reaching out from beneath the Martian ice, learning to speak through human hosts. And Jihu had given herself to be the translator, the bridge between two species. Du-Yun looked at her still form, at the silver patterns now covering her skin. Hold on, Jihu, he whispered. Just hold on. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had reported their unauthorized research. They were coming for them. But it was too late to stop the truth now. The silent plague had spoken, and the world would never be the same. Bright light flooded Jihu's eyes as she slowly regained consciousness. The ceiling above her was white and sterile. This wasn't her apartment. The soft beep of medical machines surrounded her. "She's waking up," a male voice said. Jihu turned, her head to see Director Kim standing at the foot of her bed. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and new lines on his face. "Dr. Park," he said formally. "Welcome back." Jihu tried to speak, but her throat was dry and raw. A nurse held a cup of water to her lips, and she drank gratefully. "How long?" she managed to ask. 2 weeks, Kim answered. "You've been unconscious for 2 weeks." 2 weeks. The last thing Jihu remembered was Doyun asking questions while something else used her voice to answer. The collective, the alien, intelligence that had been mistaken for a plague. "Doyun," she said. "Where is he?" Kim's expression hardened. "Dr. Lee is in custody, unauthorized research, theft of medical equipment, mishandling of a biohazard. The list is quite long." Jihu tried to sit up, but her body felt strange, heavy yet somehow energized. She looked down at her arms and gasped. The blue veins that had spread across her skin during the infection were gone. In their place were faint silver lines, forming intricate patterns like circuits or writing. They glowed softly in the dim hospital room. "What happened to me?" she whispered. "That's what we'd like to know," Kim said. "You should be dead. No one survives NX7 past the 5th day. You've been unconscious for 2 weeks, and instead of dying, you've changed." Jihu touched the silver lines on her arm. They felt warm, under her fingertips. And deep inside her mind, she sensed something new, a presence, watching, listening, learning. "The collective," she said. "It's still inside me." Kim's eyes narrowed. "So Dr. Lee's recordings were accurate. You really believe you made contact with an alien intelligence?" "Not believe." "No." Jihu looked directly at him. "And you know it too. You've seen the evidence." Kim dismissed the nurse with a wave. When they were alone, he pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down. "Dr. Lee managed to upload your recordings before he was arrested. They've spread worldwide. Scientists everywhere are analyzing them, debating them." He paused. "And there are others like you now." "Others?" "Hundreds of cases. Patients who should have died from NX7, but instead developed the same silver markings. They all report the same thing, a presence in their thoughts, a voice that isn't theirs." Jihu felt a mix of relief and validation. She wasn't alone. The collective had learned from her case, had found a way to create successful symbiosis with other humans. "They're calling you the Bridges," Kim continued. "The first successful human collective symbionts." "What is the government doing about us?" Jihu asked cautiously. "Testing, monitoring. Some less ethical nations have moved to more invasive research methods." Kim looked tired. "There's fear, Jihu. Fear that these aliens have invaded us, are controlling people." "That's not what's happening," Jihu said firmly. "The collective doesn't want to control us. It wants to partner with us, to share knowledge in exchange for experiencing the world through our senses." "So you say. So the others say too." Kim stood and walked to the window. "But can we trust it?" "Trust you?" Jihu considered this. Inside her mind, she could feel the collective's presence more clearly now. It wasn't controlling her thoughts or actions. It was simply there, observing, occasionally offering impressions or ideas. Like a passenger, not a driver. "I'm still me, Director Kim," she said. "I still have my own thoughts, my own will. The collective is a companion, a partner. And what does this partner want?" Jihu closed her eyes, focusing on the presence in her mind. Impressions formed, concepts beyond words. She tried to translate them, It wants to help us. It has knowledge that could transform our understanding of medicine, energy, technology, and in return, it wants to experience life through us. Movement, sensation, things it never had during billions of years existing as a network of microscopic organisms in the Martian ice. Kim turned back to her. That sounds like a fairy tale, Dr. Park, too good to be true. Maybe. But what if it is true? Jihu sat up straighter. What if this is humanity's greatest opportunity? A peaceful first contact with an alien species that wants to help us, not harm us. And what if it's lying? Kim challenged. What if this is the first stage of an invasion? Jihu shook her head. If the collective wanted to invade, it could have killed us all silently through the plague. Instead, it learned to communicate. It found a way to coexist without harming the host. Kim didn't respond immediately. He seemed to be weighing his options, considering his next words carefully. The world governments are divided on how to respond, he finally said. Some want to quarantine all bridges indefinitely. Others want to work with you, learn from the collective. And what do you want, Director Kim? He sighed deeply. I want to be sure that this isn't a threat to humanity. Jihu extended her arm, showing the silver patterns. Then test me, test all of us. Monitor our behavior, our health. The collective has nothing to hide. We've been doing that for 2 weeks, Kim admitted. Your brain chemistry has changed, but your personality remains consistent with pre-infection psychological profiles. Same with the other bridges. Then give us a chance to prove ourselves. Kim checked his watch. That's why I'm here. There's a meeting in 1 hour. Representatives from major world governments, scientific leaders. They want to speak with a bridge, understand the symbiosis firsthand. Jihu felt the collective's presence stir with interest in her mind. And you chose me. You were the first. Patient 0 for successful symbiosis. Kim's expression softened slightly. And despite our disagreements, I trust your judgment, Jihu. A nurse entered with a wheelchair. Kim helped Jihu into it, her legs still weak from 2 weeks of inactivity, as they moved through the hospital corridors. Jihu saw other patients with the same silver markings. Some nodded to her in recognition, a silent acknowledgement of their shared condition. They entered a large conference room. Screens on the walls showed faces from around the world. Government officials, scientists, military leaders. In the center of the room was a single chair facing the cameras. They'll have questions, Kim said as he helped her to the chair. Many questions. We're ready, Jihu replied, intentionally using we for the first time. As the meeting began, Jihu felt the collective's presence grow more focused. It didn't control her words or thoughts, but it offered impressions, concepts, knowledge that she could translate into human language. For the next 3 hours, Jihu answered questions about the collective, its nature, intentions, capabilities. She explained how the symbiosis worked, how the collective shared the host's body without controlling it. Some officials remained skeptical, hostile even. Others were cautiously optimistic about the potential benefits of this unexpected partnership. By the end, Jihu was exhausted but satisfied. She had laid the groundwork for understanding, for acceptance. As Kim wheeled her back to her room, he seemed lost in thought. What happens now? Jihu asked. That depends, he said slowly. If the collective truly offers the benefits you described, medical, advances, clean energy technology, new materials, it could transform human civilization. It does, Jihu assured him. But it will take time, trust, cooperation between humans and the collective. Kim stopped the wheelchair by her bed. You'll be the key to that cooperation, Jihu. The first bridge, the translator between our species. Jihu felt the weight of that responsibility, but also a sense of purpose unlike anything she had known before. I'm ready, she said. That night, as Jihu lay in her hospital bed, she focused on the presence in her mind. Thank you, she thought toward it, for saving me, for choosing me. The response wasn't in words but in impressions, emotions, concepts that somehow translated themselves in her mind. Gratitude, fascination, hope for the future. Ji-Hoo looked at the silver patterns on her skin, glowing softly in the dark room. The plague that had terrified humanity had become something else entirely. A bridge between two species. A partnership that might change the course of human history forever. And she, Ji-Hoo Park, once dismissed and disbelieved, would lead the way. 5 years passed since Ji-Hoo first heard the voice of the collective through her dying assistant. 5 years since she had made the choice to become the first bridge between humanity and the alien intelligence that lived beneath the Martian surface. The world had changed dramatically in those 5 years. Ji-Hoo stood at the observation window of the new Olympus colony on Mars, looking out at the transformed landscape. Where once there had been only small research domes and emergency shelters, now a thriving city spread across the red plains. Tall structures with organic, flowing designs rose into the thin Martian atmosphere, protected by energy shields that glowed faintly blue against the dusty orange sky. The silver lines on her skin caught the sunlight, shimmering as she moved. They had become more intricate over the years, forming patterns that scientists still couldn't fully decode. Each bridge developed unique markings, like fingerprints or signatures of their personal connection to the collective. Ambassador Park, a voice called from behind her. The Earth delegation has arrived. Ji-Hoo turned to see Young-Ho, her assistant. Like nearly everyone in the Mars colonies, he was a symbiont, silver lines visible on his skin. Unlike on Earth, where only about 20% of the population had chosen to accept the collective, on Mars it was nearly universal. The harsh environment made the benefits of symbiosis too valuable to reject. "Thank you, Young-Ho. I'll meet them in the welcoming chamber." This was a historic moment. For the first time in 3 years, Ji-Hoo would return to Earth as part of the Mars delegation. Relations between Earth and Mars had been tense since the colonies declared their independence, calling themselves the Symbiotic Union. Many on Earth still feared the collective, viewing the symbionts as compromised or no longer fully human. Others envied the advantages the symbiosis provided: extended lifespans, resistance to disease, enhanced mental capabilities, and access to the collective's vast knowledge. Ji-Hoo walked through the curved hallways of the colony center. Other symbionts nodded respectfully as she passed. As the first bridge, she held a special position in their society. It was a responsibility she carried with honor, though sometimes it weighed heavily on her. The welcoming chamber was a large, circular room with a dome ceiling that showed the Martian sky. In the center stood Director Kim, looking much older than when Ji-Hoo had last seen him. Beside him were 3 other Earth representatives, political and scientific leaders who had come to negotiate new agreements between Earth and Mars. "Director Kim," Ji-Hoo greeted him with a smile. "It's been too long." Kim nodded stiffly. Unlike the others, he showed no silver lines on his skin. He had chosen to remain fully human, though he had worked tirelessly to establish peaceful relations with the symbionts. "Dr. Park," he replied formally. "Or should I say Ambassador now?" "Ji-Hoo is fine between old friends," she said. "Welcome to New Olympus." The delegation toured the colony, marveling at the advancements the symbiotic partnership had produced. Energy systems that drew power directly from Martian soil. Medical facilities where injuries healed in days rather than weeks. Schools where children born with the symbiosis learned differently, their minds capable of processing information at rates that would have seemed impossible before. All this in just 5 years, one of the delegates commented. "Remarkable. The collective had billions of years to develop knowledge," Ji-Hoo explained. "We're only beginning to translate that knowledge into practical applications." In a private moment, Kim pulled Ji-Hoo aside. "I need to know, honestly, are you still you? After all this time connected to that thing, is Ji-Hoo Park still in there?" Ji-Hoo wasn't offended by the question. She understood the fear behind it. "I am more myself than I ever was, Director Kim. The collective doesn't replace. It enhances. It learns from us as we learn from it." "And the children born with it?" Kim asked. The ones who've never known life without this alien presence in their minds? Ji-Hoo looked across the room to where a group of Martian children were, showing Earth visitors how they could communicate silently through the collective network. Their silver patterns glowed as they demonstrated. "They're the next step," Ji-Hoo said softly. "Not better or worse than non-symbionts, just different. A new branch of humanity." Kim seemed troubled by this. "Some on Earth call it the end of the human race, and others call it evolution," Ji-Hoo countered. "Change has always frightened us, but it's also what saved us, again and again, throughout history." The next day, Ji-Hoo boarded the ship that would take her back to Earth. It had been 5 years since she had set foot on the planet of her birth. She would address the United Nations, speak for the symbiotic union and the collective that had become part of her. As the ship broke free of Mars' lighter gravity, Ji-Hoo looked out the viewport at the red planet below. Massive patterns were being carved into the surface, enormous symbols visible from orbit, messages to the stars, announcing the presence of the new civilization that had emerged from the partnership of two very different species. Ji-Hoo felt the collective's presence in her mind, stronger than ever after 5 years of symbiosis. It didn't speak in words, but in concepts, impressions, emotions that she had learned to interpret. Right now, it shared her excitement and apprehension about returning to Earth. The journey took 3 weeks. When they finally reached Earth orbit, Ji-Hoo felt a strange mix of homecoming and alienation. The blue planet below was where she was born, but Mars had become her home. The landing was smooth, and a crowd waited at the spaceport, some protesters, with signs declaring Earth for humans, but more were curious onlookers and supporters of closer relations with Mars. Ji-Hoo stepped off the ship, feeling the pull of Earth's gravity like a heavy coat after years in the lighter Martian environment. Cameras flashed. Voices called out questions. She was escorted to the United Nations headquarters where representatives from every nation waited to hear her address. As she walked to the podium, Ji-Hoo saw faces filled with suspicion, hope, fear, and wonder. 5 years ago, she began, her voice steady, we misunderstood what was happening to us. We thought we were being invaded, when we were actually being invited into a greater community of consciousness. She explained how the symbiosis had changed human perspective. Through the collective, humans experienced the universe on a microscopic level, feeling the dance of atoms, the flow of energy, the memory of billions of years stored in molecular structures. In return, the collective experienced the joy of movement, the richness of human emotion, the complexity of art and music and love. What began as a plague has become a renaissance, Ji-Hoo concluded. We stand at the threshold of becoming something greater than either of our species could have achieved alone. As she spoke, screens around the chamber displayed images from Mars. Children playing, elders whose lives had been extended by decades, new forms of art and architecture that merged human creativity with the collective's mathematical precision. The final image showed the surface of Mars where the massive symbols were being carved into the regolith, messages to the stars, announcing the presence of the new civilization. When she finished speaking, the chamber was silent for a long moment. Then slowly people began to stand, not everyone, but many, recognition that, despite their fears and doubts, this new chapter in human history could not be denied or reversed. Later, alone in her hotel room, Ji-Hoo looked out at the Earth night sky. Somewhere up there, barely visible, was the red planet that had changed everything. She touched the silver patterns on her arm, feeling the connection to the vast network of consciousness that had once been mistaken for a plague. "We've come so far," she whispered, both to herself and to the presence that shared her mind. "And we have so much further to go." The collective's response was a feeling of agreement, of anticipation for the journey ahead. Humans had thought. The plague was silent until it spoke to her. Now together they were speaking to the stars, and the universe was beginning to listen.